guards fired back, and Cristobal Almendarez was dead. He died in the pond edge. What we did at that time is we called the authorities immediately, the police. The doctor, the forensic doctor, went to the place. The police took an AK-47 and several cast nets that were left behind by the other robbers that were with Almendarez. And an investigation was going on by law.
So it was investigated?
Yes, it was investigated.
This is a big event. This is your guards shooting somebody. Don't you think a company of your size, even I know it was 6 years ago, should keep records of an event where somebody's killed?
Now we know. Now we know we must do, and we do. We're better organized, and we keep records of this, like the Daniel case. It's a very well documented incident with medical records, pictures, and all the information that you might need of a case like Daniel. It's here. We were not organized at that time, and the unfortunate thing is that Hurricane Mitch washed away all the evidence.
We reached a complete impasse with the Almendarez case. There seemed to be no conclusive evidence either way. The circumstances in which Daniel was shot are also unclear. He and his family say he was fishing just outside the prawn farms when he was hit. The Gran Has Marinas guard claims that he shot Daniel by accident when firing to scare off prawn thieves. But the case is being investigated by the police.
Si fue el niño que recibió un disparo en su pierna y en su brazo. Sí, él viene del sector de Los Prados. Incluso una de las personas que lo acompañaba se encuentra en este informe donde se tiene conocimiento de que él andaba ahí y tenía antecedentes de robar camarón. Y no solamente roban el camarón, sino que roban lo que es ganado, asaltan, siempre utilizan menores. En todo caso, el caso el último que hemos tenido, se capturó un niño, ¿verdad?, de 12 años de edad, familiar de uno de los detenidos. Usan menores porque nunca van presos.
Daniel and the adults that were with him deny they were stealing prawns. Even if he had been, the guard broke company regulations by opening fire without radio clearance from a supervisor.
Luckily, the kid wasn't killed. Daniel is alive and recovering, and we feel very sad because there was a kid wounded. There was a guard that lost his job because he failed to follow procedures.
¿Dónde te pegaron, Daniel?
Aquí. Le salió acá.
We have been taking care of the kid. A nurse is visiting him regularly, and when our people visited the house of the kid, we saw the poor conditions in what they live.
¿Cuántos años tienes?
And we decided to hire his father and his uncle. And so far I think they're doing fine, and the kid is recovering.
Some people might say that you offered Daniel's father and Daniel's uncle a job to keep them quiet.
Why to keep them quiet? They can speak to whoever they want. Well, they have talked to you, Jeremy, and they're not going to lose their job because of that. They're going to lose their job if they don't perform as they're supposed to. I don't see any benefit in offering them jobs to keep them quiet, because for us it's a very embarrassing and sad situation where unfortunately a kid was involved, but fortunately he wasn't killed.
Lo que sí nosotros estamos tratando de hacer como policía que somos es tener el conocimiento pleno de que la persona que le disparó a ese niño va a ir preso. Eso sí, téngalo por seguro, porque nosotros no podemos obviar que alguien le haya disparado a un menor sin ninguna justificación.
The Knevegov guide, Sal Montifer, brings the investigators to meet Daniel Salinas and his mother. Daniel is filmed and photographed, but there isn't a visit to the police or the local human rights commissioner or Granjas Marinas. We found there's been no similar cases against Granjas Marinas since the police records were lost in 1998. Recently, the district attorney has confirmed to us that they will be prosecuting the guard who shot Daniel. At the village of Wapinol, the investigators get to meet some Kadefakov members and hear their views on why the fish are disappearing.
¿Y cómo se llama este pueblo?
Este pueblo se llama Guapinol.
It's called Guapinol.
Ha reducido la cantidad de peces.
Sí.
Ha reducido bastante cantidad porque las empresas tienen un veneno que mata el que ellos no quieren y deja vivo el que utilizan ellos.
Muchas gracias, señor.
There are other explanations for the decline in fish stocks. Many villages like this one at Wapinol were only founded in the 1960s and 70s. Since then, the number of fishermen in the area has grown from an estimated 1,500 to around 13,000 today. With the introduction of outboard engines and fine mesh nets, capacity has increased. Scientists we spoke to agree that low-intensity prawn farms rarely use pesticides. They kill the prawns as well as the pests. At the end of their fourth day in Honduras, the investigators decided to contact Granjas Marinas. But not as EJF.
If they do get specific about what Channel Media does, we make educational films for distribution to a range of outlets.
As specialist undercover operators, the investigators are pretending to be from Channel Media, an independent TV company.
Speaking, you're not sure what to say. You can say, "Oh, forgive me, I'm just a translator. Let me just ask my colleague." Should we say on Friday about 3? Because that way we could do some filming of their prawns at about 4.
That's not work. Should I just ask at reception? Sí, está bien.
In Honduras, offices open at 7 in the morning and normally close between 4 and 5. It's now just after 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Nadie.
Packed up for the day, it's fine.
I think they're packed up for the day. That's what I reckon too.
They never did get to speak to Granjas Marinas.
Okay.
Buenas.
Salmon Tufa takes the investigators on a boat trip up the estuary. They passed mile upon mile of unbroken mangrove forest. For much of the way, Granjas Marinas' prawn farms lay behind the trees on either side. They're going to see one of the company's estuary outlets, which sometimes releases water from the prawn ponds.
Este es el tufo.
It's just outrageous. It's just a fucking wilderness, really, isn't it? You know? This place, you know? It's just outrageous what's going on.
La desembocadura de un drenaje construido por Granjas Marinas. Está la alcantarilla al fondo, la cantidad de agua que está desembocando. Esta agua viene de las lagunas, donde cosechan su producción. Se observa la gran contaminación producto de los químicos que utilizan dentro.
Could we even go just up to that log there? Just because this branch is in the way?
Que intentemos. Sacar la prueba ahí hacia el árbol, a ver si puede salir. Es arriesgado. Yo sé que es peligroso. Esa es la otra cara de Granjas Marinas. Por dentro es bonito, lagunas, belleza. Y esto es el otro lado de la moneda. Son residuos de cal, del mismo urea concentrado, químicos como Sebin 80 supuestamente para matar camarón fantasma, etc. No, acá no pueden pescar. O sea, hay hay vigilancia, ¿verdad? Hay vigilancia. Y ese es el problema. Entonces la industria no permite que el pescador penetre ahí. Es cuando es, o sea, lo balean, lo balacean, decimos.
What we're seeing here is pollution from one of the prawn farms belonging to GGM. Publicly, they like to maintain that their company is responsible and not involved with either human rights abuses or environmental damage. There will be these sorts of pictures that GGM and the supermarkets back in London who purchase prawns from GGM won't appreciate having in the public domain. It appears to be a cocktail of some sort of pesticide that's actually coming down out of the prawn farm and down into the river itself.
No, viene directamente de la laguna de producción.
Have you ever tested the chemical analysis of the water from here?
No, nosotros confiamos en Sesco en ese momento. Yo llevé dos o tres muestras de lodo, pero desgraciadamente no teníamos fondos y solicitamos voluntarios de la carrera de biología de la universidad, pero no pudimos investigar.
4 years ago, a government agency did tests in the estuary and found no evidence of pesticides near Granjas Marinas. So what causes the foam? The evening before, I visited the same outlet with Hector Corrales. When there's no prawn harvest, Granjas Marinas allow tidal water to flow in and out of the estuary.
Tide in the estuary is low. The water that went in is coming down. There is a fall in here of about 2 meters. The water goes down 2 meters. It hits a concrete floor, and that creates an oxidation procedure. And the water that goes back is very rich in oxygen, and the foam dissolves into the estuary.
So the investigators have been filming tidal water, not water from the ponds. Any observation of nutrient and oxygen-rich estuarine water will show that it foams when agitated. It's an entirely natural process, not evidence of pesticides. Granjas Marinas use tidal water to nourish the mangrove they planted around their ponds.
This is a very interesting feature of the mangrove. The mangrove sucks the salty water along with nutrients and expels the salt through the leaves. No other plant could do that, and you can taste this very salty, very purified salt. So mangroves help keep nutrient balance in nature. That's why we encourage mangrove growth in all our banks, in all our ponds, as in this oxidation pond.
We also wanted to know whether fishermen might be shot if they come here. Hector Corrales shows us a fisherman's camp.
Only fishermen come here. There is no shrimp in here. I can see some of them even left the names. You can see here Chepe was here. And you can see some trash that they left. Some of them even use outboard motors. This is 2-cycle oil bottle left here, and pieces of coolers that were broke. But they're free to come in here. We don't have guards in here. And the only place where they have to report if they come by foot or bicycle, it's at the gate.
The fisherman's camp is 15 meters from where the investigators were filming. If they'd gone beyond the outlet, they would have seen the company's oxygenation lagoon. Here, they might have seen fishermen who, far from being shot at, are allowed to catch fish. If the water were poisoned, it would seem unlikely that these fishermen would have continued to fish here for the last 20 years. After their visit to the outlet, the team set off on their return journey. Saul leads the investigators past another fisherman's camp, which they appear not to notice. Again, it was on the same bank as Granjas Marinas' farm. They did spot another outlet.
It's one of the outlets for the Granjas Marinas.
They've got guards at the other end, and any fishermen who go up there might be shot at night.
The EJF team pressed on while we hung back. Several fishermen had told us that they'd heard that others had been harassed by guards. We were interested to know whether the fishermen we'd spotted had any direct experience.
¿Cuál es su experiencia con los vigilantes de Granjas Marinas San Bernardo?
Es que nosotros, como le vuelvo y le repito, nosotros venimos aquí a pescar hasta los 8 días pescando. Y pescar, este campamento es viejo de estar acá. Nosotros aquí, por ejemplo, lo reconocemos como que viniéramos a casa, digamos. Entonces, aquí nosotros nunca hemos tenido problemas con Granja Marina. Porque tiene uno sus entradas de agua ahí que de ahí uno no se pasa 10 metros de adentro de donde ellos los ponen.
¿Están contaminadas las aguas que salen de los desagües de Granjas Marinas San Bernardo, que usted sepa?
No, a ver, no. No, nunca.
Along the road to Granjas Marinas, the company has acquired over 2 square kilometres of land from another prawn farm. They've given it over to the community for the use of local fishermen.
People have been going into the boundaries to fish since we started. What they do is they just sign and they're free to move within the area that we won't develop and we haven't developed. That was an agreement since 2001 when we were accused of the same thing. So we said, let's have a community representative there. And it's been there since.
But some people say that it's now harder for the fishermen to get to their original fishing grounds than it used to be in the past.
Fishing grounds in this area are located traditionally where the seasonal ponds are. They're still there. They're still outside our boundaries. The real fishermen, they really go into the estuaries that surround the area, and access to the estuaries that surround San Bernardo farm, it's open. If they want to go through our gate, it's fine. It's a better walk because there is a road to both estuaries. So that claim, I don't think it's true.
We asked the local fishermen about Granjas Marinas.
Es lo mismo, pues todavía Granja Marina no nos da problema a nosotros, porque hay veces que le ayuda a la gente, no a todos, ¿va? Porque como digo, yo voy sobre 32 años, de 31 años, y yo nunca he trabajado un día allí en esa camaronera, porque no es a cualquiera que le dan trabajo también. Y yo durante mis años yo he sido pescador. Entonces nosotros ya quedamos fregados y dónde vamos a pagar y toda la gente de aquí es pobre. Unos son beneficiados porque trabajan en Granja Marina y tal vez los otros, los pobres que no los dan trabajo, ahí son los que sufrimos aquí porque nosotros vivimos del pescadito.
Before the prawn farms came, the population of the Gulf of Fonseca was extremely poor. Many still remain this way. But there's a growing gap between them and those who have been lucky enough to get jobs.
$25,000 people live directly or indirectly from the shrimp farming operations. 65% of the employment generated by the industry is women. And women, when they earn money, in our culture, they really take it to the home where it makes a difference.
El camarón significa mucho para nosotros. Sí. Porque de ello dependemos, del camarón. Porque si no existiera el camarón, no siguiéramos adelante, no tendríamos comunidades para seguir adelante. De ello, del camarón vivimos. Porque si yo no trabajara ahí, no tuviera de qué pasar. Y de ese trabajo paso. Paso yo a mis hijos, toda mi familia.
A comparison between Shimara's household and Daniel's is evidence that there is some economic development occurring. And it's this development that Hector Corrales asserts is under threat from local and foreign campaigners.
It's very dangerous campaigns like this, sponsored by even Hondurans, without absolutely any base, any scientific base. That's not true.
¿Y el perro, Roxanne?
There's an EJF investigation team. Have they approached you?
No, we have never been approached by them, even when they published those papers accusing us of all those accusations that you know of. If you want to really do a serious investigation, you should check all the stakeholders, and we have not been approached.
Investigative work has become a necessity. It's a method that's been pioneered by a range of environmental groups. Where EJF is different is we're very interested in developing long-term partnerships with pressure groups in the countries where the abuses are taking place. And we will support them and train them to investigate and find the solutions to those problems.
So you hope these people will apply the same standards that you do?
Very much so. The Environmental Justice Foundation has been involved in training activists in other parts of the world where investigations are already underway, where activists trained by EJF are now employing the techniques that they've been taught.
It's all in the EJF training manual. 2 months later, and back in London, I asked Steve Trent about his Honduran investigation.
I've had a look and I've had some detailed briefings from our investigators. We always take great care, we have to, because if we make one mistake it undermines the entire credibility of our information. So we have a very rigorous internal process to look at the information, to understand where it's coming from, and to be sure that we actually have facts rather than speculation. The information's shocking.
It was a fortnight later in Rome that Steve met up with his investigator to go through the evidence and discuss their draft report.
We've got the human rights abuse, we've got the environmental destruction, we've got the top UK retailers sourcing from it. I think that this is the one that will turn public opinion, hopefully, or will empower people to know exactly what it is they're buying into.
Okay. So the key things, we want to put these key facts down, get them point by point, substantiate them, ensure the veracity of each fact, and where in doubt, obviously highlight the doubt, but still put the potential, and then put this to the retailers, put this to the companies like Marks and Spencer's and others who are receiving from these companies in this country.
They decided to go ahead with the report and give the story to a newspaper if Marks and Spencer did not provide an adequate response.
I think companies like Marks and Spencer's should look at their Honduran suppliers, look at the evidence we've given them, and then make a fairly quick decision not to buy. I mean, that's the case. These companies are responsible for human rights abuses and the destruction of our natural environment. We shouldn't be patronising them. There is a case to answer, and it needs to be answered now.
In late August 2004, Steve Trent made a second approach to Marks and Spencer. Disappointed with their response, EJF went on to prepare a report on Marks and Spencer's Honduran supplier, which they hoped to submit to a national newspaper in early September. We never saw the report, but Steve Trent told us that he'd been warned by his lawyer that the Environmental Justice Foundation were vulnerable to being sued. So far, no Honduran report has been published. Marks and Spencer maintain their support for their supplier, stating that they pride themselves on having the best quality prawns. We asked Steve Trent for a final interview, giving him the opportunity to respond in person to some of the issues raised in the film. he declined. In a written reply, he states that their investigation was only a scoping trip and their research in Honduras still continues. They will not publish their report until they've established the veracity and value of publishing. In some parts of the world, prawn farming is associated with environmental and human rights abuses. Elsewhere in Honduras, we saw evidence of a few hectares of illegal mangrove destruction. This was caused by a smaller farm which does not export to the UK. We found that Granjas Marinas does take care to produce its prawns with a minimal impact on their surroundings. They seem to be responsible employers who are investing in their local community. The fact that they've been using the same ponds for over 30 years shows they are managing their environment sustainably. They insist they have no plans to expand.
Isn't your company planning to expand further?
The Gulf of Fonseca doesn't have the capability or the assimilative capacity to increase production with the technology currently being used in the Gulf of Fonseca. Remember, we live on the water quality of the estuaries. If there is something wrong with it, we're going to be hanging ourselves. So categorically, we're not going to expand in the Gulf of Fonseca.
Even Jorge Varela concedes that Granjas Marinas has improved in the last few years. But he still insists that the company he's been opposing for so many years will continue to expand.
Given that the company is improving, should we, British people that buy their prawns, should we give them a chance and continue to buy their prawns? Or should we stop?
Absolutamente no deben de seguir comprando los camarones. Absolutamente no. Entonces, yo pido al pueblo de Inglaterra que no siga comprando camarones, ni a Granjas Marinas San Bernardo, ni a ninguna otra compañía, a menos que éstas en principio detengan su expansión.
Jorge Varela now says he wishes to retract his request that we stop buying Honduran prawns, and now says it's up to us, the British consumers, to decide. But consumers need evidence. We found no evidence to suggest that we should not be buying Honduran prawns.